Peanut butter and jelly, dinner and a movie, rock and roll. Some things are just better together. In fact, it'd be pretty cool if you could get your favorite streaming apps and internet together, right? Xfinity thinks so, and that's what Xfinity Stream Saver was designed to deliver. When you add Xfinity Stream Saver to your internet, you get Apple TV Plus, Netflix, and Peacock, all for just $15 a month. That's a whole lot of entertainment for your money, all on the network built for streaming. Switch today. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Price subject to change.
Want to connect with a family member who doesn't speak your language? Then check out the language learning program Rosetta Stone on desktop or as an app. Rosetta Stone is designed to immerse you in the language you're learning through an intuitive process. Plus, the True Accent feature even gives you feedback on your pronunciation. And with a lifetime membership, you have access to all 25 offered languages. Get started today. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50 to get 50% off your lifetime membership now. That's rosettastone.com/pod50 for 50% off.
To get the Crime Writers on Aftershow right now, go to patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And in this episode, filmmakers follow officers in a troubled Michigan city to confront the challenges of policing, race relations, politics, and what it means to be a community. We'll go back to our 2018 review of the documentary series Flint Town. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Kevin.
Yes.
What are we listening to today?
Hey, we're going back to June 22nd, 2018.
Wow.
For our review of the series Flint Town.
Wow, this is one of those I actually remember watching it. Like, I remember what it felt like to watch this. I remember the cinematography. I remember the way it looked, the way it felt to watch. It's one of those, you know?
And you remember how you felt about that couple.
Oh, my God. I hope they're... I was like, please don't marry that guy.
All right, how about we go listen to our review?
All right. Netflix's new documentary series, Flint Town, is about a year inside the understaffed police force of one of the nation's most violent cities, Flint, Michigan. While showing a range of views from officers and residents, we primarily follow a patrolwoman who longs to be a detective, her embittered boyfriend who is also her sergeant, a rookie who is going to the academy with his mother, and the new chief under pressure to bring down crime in any way he can.
Flint isn't average by a long shot. It's hard to step out of your own skin and realize that this isn't what everyone else is dealing with. I mean, every system has a breaking point, and I don't know where ours is.
Flint, it was a great place to grow up.
The home of the middle class.
And then things kind of changed. Then they changed quick.
You're all right, okay?
Flint Town touches on all the issues, including black and white relations, police militarization, violence against and committed by law enforcement, staffing issues, politics, and the water crisis. But it still tells a story without getting lost necessarily in those issues. You may not like everything you see, but perhaps you need to see it. We are going to be giving away spoilers about Flint Town. So if you'd like to jump ahead to our spoiler-free review, fast forward to the time code indicated in the show notes. So the one thing that we have to get right out of the way, the cinematography of the show, the way that it's put together. Kevin, thoughts?
Fantastic. I mean, it's so beautiful to watch. The remote cameras, the way they use the drone footage, which can be really hackneyed,
yeah.
But it's great. There's so much sense of environment that some of the episodes take place with, thick white snow everywhere, and so the red and blue lights just create this surreal image. It's stark. It's thematic in that way. There's the one where they've got 4th of July fireworks going off at night around all the action. I just think that all of the shots in the field are just so well done. It's not like watching an episode of Cops. It has a couple of those moments every episode where they're racing to something. But it's just put together so much better than a lot of the stuff we've seen.
I totally agree. I think the cinematography. I mean, it's really movie quality cinematography.
Yeah.
Even the shots of cops in the cars, like typically the shot is like a dash cam, but they shoot the cops when they're driving around from the outside of the car, so you see them through the windshield, the way
from the hood back.
Yeah, the way that the civilians would see them if they were to look into the car. Everything is sort of seen from multiple perspectives. There's a gorgeous shot of one of the main characters in the story, Bridget, the cop that we see, the young woman who wants to be a detective, and she finds out that the structure of the police department is not going to allow her to move into that job. So she basically, the episode ends with her disappointment. And I don't know if the shot they got is concurrent with when she found that out. I mean, I don't know. How the film was made. The episode ends with this gorgeous shot of her standing in the parking lot of the Flint police station holding a rifle, in her full uniform in the snow. And it was beautiful to look at. Laura, you thought so too, right?
Oh, yeah. It was just, overall, there was a lot of, for me, like just exasperation, depression, like for this city dealing with what they're dealing with. I was just amazed by the quality. And, certain scenes, and this is just a small scene, but just they would do close-ups at times where I'm sure that the subjects didn't even realize they were doing close-ups. Like one that just stood out when the police chief was getting his haircut.
Yeah.
And they zoomed right in. But it just was it really helped bring the story to a whole different level, having, this level of cinematography that was just so far above what you would normally see, I think, on a documentary of this nature.
I think so too, Toby. I thought it brought a lot of humanity to the story of all the characters, even the characters that I think ultimately turn out to be unlikable. Isn't there sort of a humanity that comes when you just show them that close up? I don't know. Toby, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it was the visuals so much in that you just saw people in such different circumstances, so that you would see, like, especially some of the African American cops who you would see in these like full on, like, down on the ground, motherfucker, all this stuff, like really aggressive policing. And then you would have them, driving their police car, just kind of talking about their sort of ideas or philosophy about policing and racial relations and things like that. And it's just you see the two sides of it, which is that when there's action, it's like all business. And when they have a chance to be more reflective, I thought all of the African-American cops that they spent any time talking to had some really interesting and sort of nuanced thoughts about what their role in the society was, which I think the white cops were almost entirely lacking in.
Well, except for the one, my boyfriend and Laura's husband's boyfriend, from what I understand.
Oh, yeah.
The bald
Which one?
captain slash lieutenant.
captain.
Ritter?
He was good. And I actually, even
Good. He was amazing.
Yeah.
And very handsome.
Yeah, no, he seemed like he was a little more
letter.
He was a little more reflective.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking more about, they have the one guy who they really focus on.
Robert Frost. The ironically named Robert Frost.
Right. He doesn't seem very thoughtful about anything. And then Bridget, she's ambitious and she's clearly smart, but again, she also, like, she comes across as being sort of an appealing character, but the more you kind of go along, the more you realize at least for me, it was sort of more the circumstance that she was in and what she was kind of dealing with. But that when you hear more about like what her kind of outlook on things is, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the reason that she is such a compelling character, I mean, first of all, she's out of place in this scene, right? This is a police department. We see mostly men. We have the other woman who's in the cat squad, but it is mostly men. And she is ambitious from a career perspective. Like, she has goals. Like, she wants to work for the FBI. She has sort of a bigger vision for herself that is larger than the circumstances that surround her. And in a lot of ways, larger than Robert Frost, who, as it turns out, is also her live-in boyfriend. And I found myself throughout the documentary in, like, most of the episodes, when I saw their scenes together, just being like, Bridget, good on you that you're like being nice to this guy who loves you, but like, you could, I think, be more than what this guy is like setting, especially when you kind of get to know him better and you hear some of his views and you see how he reacts when they watch that Philando Castile video. And I don't know.
They got married last month, by the way.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
So I guess she's not going to dump him and move on for a career in the FBI like I'd hoped. She's not going to become Clarice Starling.
I guess not.
How disappointed, Laura? You're personally disappointed by that too, right?
I am. I just, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. He wasn't that bad, but
He was bad. No, he was.
I just felt like I was watching this and I'm like, this is like what happens to, look at different people that from like right after college and say they were ambitious and they got a job and they were smart and then they got a boyfriend and then the boyfriend didn't want to move, so they stayed where they were instead of actually, I mean, I hate to say this, but I had friends like this, and it was like, yeah. Laura Bricker. No, I'm just kidding. No. It's not me. But I just felt like, when they went on that vacation, I realized how small his worldview really was.
Right.
I think he said it was the first time he'd been on a plane.
Right.
So I was like, I don't think he's left. Like he's in this sort of bubble of like survival in Flint, Michigan, and she's had a different outlook on things. But I think that I don't know how long that's going to last for her in terms of having that different outlook.
So let's zoom out a little bit because the series is really about this very troubled city, troubled on many, many levels, and this very understaffed police department that is paying their cops, like $15 an hour or something we learn at some point in the show, which is
not
insane.
a lot, yeah.
And there's a political shift. There's a new mayor elected who then fires the chief, who we've already met in the first couple episodes, and brings on a new chief who's kind of, dare I say, a bit of a cowboy who has, ambitious, aggressive ideas about how to police the city that sound a whole lot like exactly what we heard in the first couple of episodes doesn't work. Militarization, lack of community policing. One of the first things he does is set up this CAT squad. It's a unit that patrols high crime areas using the tactics of basically going to where crimes have happened before and just being very aggressive in these militarized vehicles. Was this CAT squad necessary? Toby, what do you think?
It's a little bit hard to tell just because you're watching a documentary and God only knows what else happened. But it seems like, a fair amount of the time, it's, a lot of sound and fury resulting in not that much. Like they get that one guy who they pull over who like drives into his own driveway and they're giving him the business like, I'm going to take you downtown or whatever. And it's just the guy's like, what the fuck? I was just like driving in my driveway. It was right there.
Oh, I want to talk about that later.
And then there's a whole thing with the liquor store that is like a lot of like intimidation and effort and stuff. And then the judge is like, what the fuck are you talking about? We're opening it back up again.
Like you can't close down a private business, right?
Right. Yeah. And then there's, later they bring up the problem, which is, at a time when at some nights, I mean, there are nights when there's like 4 police cars out for a city of 100,000, and then you've got eight, of your most experienced cops like driving around this Humvee, like looking for potential trouble. And the whole idea of like stopping crime before it happens, it seems like one of those things that sounds good in principle if you want to be a hard ass, but then when it's actually like designating resources, how effective is it? And, the documentary kind of makes the case that it's not that effective because even though like violent crime it goes down, they're like, oh, it's down 40%. We hope it's 50%. And it's like, oh, well, then we had this week where 6 people were killed. And now suddenly it's not like that anymore. So,
Laura, let's talk about that staffing because that is a huge theme in the documentary. And you are law enforcement adjacent. Your husband's a fire chief. And I am not law enforcement adjacent. Like my grandfather was a police officer, but like even I know that watching these cops go out on dangerous calls alone in patrol cars is scary. And even I know that when you see 40, 50 calls backed up on the lines and there's been a shooting and it takes 2 hours for cops to show up, like what did you think of that? There's the resources that this city lacks.
Yeah, it was funny. Ken and I were actually watching some of these episodes together, and we were talking about it because I was like, how many officers do we have on duty? And we figured out like based on like what we have in like our towns around us where we live in New Hampshire in terms of the number of police that they have on duty during a shift based on what your population is, like Flint was at like 25% of staffing compared to like what we see where we live for like normal staffing.
In Exeter,
so they're
New
like
Hampshire.
at a quarter. Yeah, like at a quarter of what they should be at. It was funny. He came in, we were watching that Cat Squad one, and I was like, what do you make of this? And he's like, well, you know, you're going to take resources away there, you're going to see an effect over here. And that's clearly what we saw. I mean, the fact that they had 40 calls backed up when they came on duty, there's no way that they're going to get to those calls on their shift if they have to get to emergencies that are happening. It's something that, you know, I've had to, you know, pay attention to because I do hear these stories and I hear about budget cuts, and I heard about, you know, a local town near us where, and this made me like crazy, you know, same thing, like, oh no, we're going to make budget cuts, and they cut like active shooter training. And I'm like, you can't do that in this day and age,
Right.
you know, like, what are you doing?
Right.
So I think it's just, I felt a lot of sympathy for all of these officers because I felt like even the ones that had the bad attitudes, I mean, they were being set up to lose. Like, I mean, there was no good outcome for these officers. Just looking at the approach that the police chief was taking, it was almost like I felt like watching it like he was in a war zone somewhere, not here. And it wasn't like he was following what we would consider to be the normal boundaries in terms of how you would enforce things. It was like triaging everything. And that's not going to get you anywhere.
It reminded me a lot of watching like The Wire and how they used to juke the stats. Like he's just coming up with a way to improve the numbers and basically saying like, we're not going to invest in these things that are important. We're going to do this instead because it'll be like a short-term gain. And I felt like that to me. Kevin, what were you thinking?
I was thinking, you know, one of the things that hit me was the complex, intertwined nature of race and their job and how they do their job and how the community affects them and how it's viewed differently by white officers and by the black officers.
Huge theme in the documentary.
Yeah,
Huge.
and I really enjoyed hearing from the black officers because they did talk about that complexity. I that's something I enjoy. Is anything let's get down and dig in a little deeper on some stuff. And they were comfortable enough talking to the camera about that. And there was that one sergeant, and I think his name is pronounced Urquhart.
Yes.
I mean, he's
not the one who's also a minister on the side.
No, that's another guy. There's a great
Which
character
is
there.
Fascinating.
But he said, you know, he and all the black officers we heard were very proud of their profession, what they did. But he said, you know, I wear the uniform, but I also fit the description.
Right.
So he was self-aware about that. And I thought that, you know, I think we saw like the white officers handled themselves very well. There's sometimes you're like, I don't know if I would have yelled at that person.
Well, it's also what we saw on camera.
It's also what we saw on camera, right? I got to imagine
we also
if there
saw
were a
what the
police
white
beating,
officers said when they weren't interacting with suspects.
Right,
and some
exactly.
of it was ugly.
Yes. But what I'm saying is that I thought that the black officers had better soft skills with the community members that they're dealing, even when they have to arrest them. And Toby talked about a really interesting exchange where they had where they tried to stop a guy for, you know, in a traffic stop. He wouldn't stop. He pulled into his driveway. When the officers went up, he did something with his hands. And so the black officer, you know, yelled at him, started reading him the riot act. So he gets the citizen, he puts him in the back, young black guy, and he's walking around and telling, you know, he's going to pay dearly for that. I'm going to take his car. He sounds like this is going to be like really serious. And he sits there and he's telling him, you know, what? Why didn't you stop? You know, tell me that, and what you did with your hands. He's not just chewing him out as an officer. He is subtly telling him, warning him, not in a "I'm going to write you up" way, for your own safety.
Yeah.
He's basically pointing out these are the things
as a fellow community
as
member.
a community member.
Right.
He doesn't explicitly say this, but another cop, perhaps a white cop. You do that and that and that,
and you die.
Yeah,
yeah.
He doesn't say that.
That's what he means.
But that's what he means. And you know, and he sends the guy on his way after what could have been very serious.
There's another
we see a lot of those things.
There's another really powerful scene where the cop talks about the police as a brotherhood and says like my fellow black men, like they're my brothers, and my fellow cops are my brothers, and I'm caught between these two brotherhoods. Like it is. And this happens, I mean, I think one of the most powerful scenes in the documentary is as a training tool. And I have to say, like, This could have been a very different kind of documentary. We don't know what was left on the cutting room floor. We do know the documentarian spent a year with these cops, and there's very few of these cops. So
they shuffled the time. I know a little bit about that.
Yeah,
too.
they did shuffle the time because we did see ranks change and stuff back and forth.
I thought he's a captain, but he's a lieutenant.
You mean the hot guy?
Yeah, the hot guy. Yes, he's a captain, and all of a sudden he's a lieutenant.
I don't want to get too far into
Yeah.
the rabbit hole of the hot guy, but there was this one.
Well, there was one scene that was amazing with how he dealt with that woman
The
that
hot
he
guy?
pulled over.
The one who
that
lied
was
to
good.
him?
Yes.
Yes. We should probably use his name, but can we just keep calling him the hot guy as a point of reference?
I don't remember what his name was. The hot, bald captain guy. Anyway, so he pulled this woman over that was going the wrong way on a street, and he asked her for her ID, and she's like, I don't have ID. Then he asked her for her name, and then she gave a name, and then she's like, that's not really my name. And it was like this whole just train wreck. And this guy was great. This is the guy that Fireman Ken loved as well. But he's like, I'd like that guy to work for me because he never got fazed by anything. He never. I know. He just took everything in stride. But he was so decent with how he dealt with people. So
Devin
instead of
Ritter.
I'm going to send him a fan letter.
Burn Richard.
I am too, Rebecca. So, that scene really stood out to me because it's a situation that we've seen. I mean, I've seen cases like this when I used to do defense investigations, and it could have gone so wrong so quickly because, and this guy was just like, okay, get out of the car, have a seat. And he's like, let's talk about this. Like, what's going on here? And she's just like, just freaked out, but he just handled it in such just the way he handled it, I was so impressed because I feel like, we see so much lately about cops doing things that are like suspect and you're like, and it starts to become a stereotype. And then, you have to remind yourself, this isn't everybody that's in this field. And there are good people like in all careers. And this guy clearly, aside from the fact that he was hot, he really handled that situation just so well. And I think in the end, he let her off with a warning.
The guy I'd most likely want to have a beer with.
But we also know that there were cameras present and a documentary crew present for all of this.
Who knows how that would have gone down?
So we don't know how any of the stuff would have gone down had the documentary crew not been present. But that being said, he took the moment to deconstruct it and said to that driver, tell me why you had this impulse to lie to me about your name. Your name came out clear. Your car came out clear. You don't have any outstanding warrants. Like, why was your first impulse to lie? And what we get as a viewer is maybe, let's just assume that he's being truthful for the cameras, maybe he actually really wants to know, right? Like maybe he wants to learn something, which isn't the typical narrative.
But it also teaches us something.
So let's just talk about a typical narrative that we do get, that we also see, because I don't think the documentary shies away from like the actual systemic racism that exists within police departments. There's a training morning where the cops, this is right after the Philando Castile shooting, are asked to watch the video that we've talked about in the show before, where Philando Castile's girlfriend shot the video right after her boyfriend was shot, and basically we watch him die as these cops are still training their guns on him. So they make them watch the video at roll call, and then they share their thoughts. And later they talk in the episode about the police shooting, the police ambush in Dallas, and there are two distinct reactions to both of these incidents. Toby, what did you think of these scenes in the documentary where we just see in the moment, in the roll call, the cops reacting to each of these, and the white cops are all on one side, it's seemingly, and the black cops are on the other.
And the black cops don't really say anything.
That's right. Not in the roll call.
It's like the white cops all are kind of jumping to the cops' defense, and the black cops are all kind of, watching it.
Except for the captain, which I thought was interesting. The one who brought it up, he wanted to talk about it. He was the only one, Toby, who had the observation about how the patrolman was acting improperly, and everybody else is talking about,
Right. He's still yelling. He's all amped up.
Yeah.
There's something more going on. Who knows how it was edited?
I'm sorry to jump in on you. I was just excited about that.
No. No. You're totally right. And there's an older African American cop who says something about like, that's why I always tell them to keep their hands where I can see them or something. At that point was when I actually sent you guys an email about like what I wanted, what sort of observations or whatever. And this is before we even get to like the more sort of direct stuff at the end, but saying this is a police force that's got a race issue. Mm-hmm. Even if the cops get along and stuff, their perception of the world is so different. Like if you do something wrong in Flint, especially if you're a young African-American man, like your experience is going to be quite different depending on which cop shows up to deal with you.
Right.
But not just Flint.
No, I think that's absolutely true. in general. But as far as this documentary went, to me, I thought the scene that had like the most impact for me about kind of what the themes of the whole series was right towards the end when the cop who's also the preacher is driving down this one street, and he's like, I could take all of these cars. I could take every one of these cars. I've got a reason to take all these cars, but what does that do to this neighborhood? What does that do to Flint if I do that? And he's got an interesting perspective because he's both a preacher and a cop. So I think he's seeing a lot of the troubles in the city from two different perches. But that's really it, right? It's like the big question is, in this crazy violent city where you're way understaffed and there's no way you can really deal with everything. It's like, what are you trying to accomplish with what you've got? And I think that's the problem with Tim Johnson, the new chief. Like, what he wants to accomplish, I think you can only accomplish if you have like a fully staffed police force.
Right.
I mean, if you really want to send people in on force, you need to have the manpower to do it. And what he's doing is putting some people in the Humvee, showing up here, there, or some other place. And you see later, like some woman comes up, she's like, there's been all these troubles on my block. And he's like, what block is that? And she tells him, she's like, I heard there was this cat force that was supposed to be going around checking this stuff out. He's like, well, yeah, you're on our list. We go by there every once in a while, but there's just no way they can, you're using a sledgehammer on, I just lost my analogy completely, but you're basically using like a blunt instrument on something where you really need, you're trying to chop down a tree with a hammer.
That was like so many analogies.
I'm just going to keep saying words and two of them will connect in the right way.
Just like Chief Johnson.
I think along those lines, one of the most powerful sort of sections of the documentary was around the Trump election. And Trump actually came to Flint and gave a speech. And there's that scene where all the cops are actually on their way to a Bernie Sanders Hillary Clinton debate, because there was a Hillary Clinton Bernie Sanders debate also in town, and they're talking about the election in this giant van where they're all driving there to do the job. And you get this very clear-eyed perspective on why the white cops in the van are anti-Hillary, mostly anti-Hillary, not anti-Democrat, but definitely anti-Hillary. And then later as the Trump election comes around, like Robert Frost talks about like why he's voting for Trump. And it's all about the law enforcement rhetoric. Like Trump is pro-cop. Trump is pro-cop, Trump is pro-cop. And then one of the black police officers says to the camera, yeah, Trump is pro-cop, but don't we have to think about everybody else, not just the cop? Like, shouldn't we be thinking about everybody? And that was like such a moment to me of just like reflection and a broader view. And it wasn't like, what was interesting about this documentary to me and the race stuff was they weren't, I think, showing. And they did a lot of showing and not telling, which I loved. It wasn't like the white cops were on one side and the black cops were on the other. It was like the white cops were more tunnel vision and the black cops were more open. That's how it came across, at least in this small community of cops in this town. And it was really interesting. But I just want to touch on one more aspect of this before we wrap it up. Laura, about 2/3 of the way through the documentary, we start seeing that one of the new chief's tactics in order to staff the police department is to recruit a bunch of old, busted-ass volunteer cops to join the force in some way. And
reserves.
Like, and one of the tests for these reserves is to stand approximately 11 inches from a target.
10 feet, 12 feet.
It did not look like 12 feet. It looked like it was about 11 inches away. And at least just try to hit in the general realm of the target. And we kind of get to know a couple of these volunteer cops a little bit. What do you think of this concept of just like bringing regular people in, a lot of retirees, armed to help your cops patrol the streets?
Yeah. Ken and I were watching this one together and we're like, yeah, this may not be the best idea this guy's ever had. I understand having the reserves and having like auxiliary police. Like I know places that do that, but I don't feel like the auxiliary reserve people are usually armed. And that's the part that really, like we had the one guy that we followed, he was so happy. He was singing all the time and taking care of his wife and taking care of his parents. And, he was, was he 65? I was like, oh my word. So, I guess it's a bold way to get more, warm bodies out there on the street. But like, honestly, like you had your guy there going through training, the regular recruit. Like, how long did he have to go through training? And then he still had to ride with
16
another
weeks.
officer for,
That's right.
before he could go on his own. And then these guys are like, all right, we're hitting the street.
Right.
I was like, whoa. In terms of bridging the gap with the community, I think maybe that is the benefit you get there, is that more people in the community are going to feel, maybe connected to the police.
But then they went on the call and they just stood around looking around them like cluelessly. Like,
Oh my God, that was hysterical.
what are we supposed to do now that we're here?
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's an abandoned car.
It was totally bizarre. Like, I cannot imagine something like that happening. I don't even know what to say about it. It was so bizarre.
I don't know how common it is, but that's certainly not only in Flint. There's a guy, I think, in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Who
Murdered somebody.
Yeah, murdered somebody who was on their face cuffed. Just killed them.
Went for the taser and got the handgun instead.
But my thing is, like, one of these guys is going to get killed.
Right.
They're going to go to a place, and these guys have got guns. So even if somebody was like, oh, I don't want to kill this 65-year-old guy, if he starts reaching for his holster, people, they're going to get killed. So I don't know. To me, like, the idea that there was nobody who was like, Chief, why don't we rethink this?
Right.
You don't have to
Like,
take everybody, Chief.
Right. But that wasn't the
right.
only...
And maybe these guys can answer phones. Like, you're talking about how you've only got one guy answering phones, and
Yes.
you've got like one of your best cops doing it. These guys can answer phones, just do something like that.
For as much as I hate Robert Frost in this documentary, I do really kind of hate the guy. We do see him, working as a cop, also being a dispatcher, also training these volunteer cops. Like, everyone is doing every job. It's crazy. So, Kevin, crazy thing number 2, I'll come to you for this one.
Yeah.
The chief decides to raise money for the police department. He's going to sell all the firearms that were taken in as evidence in other crimes. And they basically have like an eBay sale. And basically
I'm sure it was
just
an auction. Probably
sell
a lot.
those guns back out in the streets again. Thoughts?
It's done in many places. I think a lot of people watching the documentary may not know that.
I was shocked.
But, and as the TV reporter pointed out, I mean, there is, it's touchy because...
I love the TV reporter, by the way.
Yeah,
I loved her.
Yeah, I do believe that and this is just from the context, I think that the only people that could buy in the auction were licensed gun dealers. So individuals
who then
couldn't
will
purchase,
exploit loopholes to sell them to people who get back on the streets.
I don't know. They didn't spend that much time on it.
That's
but
true.
But I mean, I think it just goes to the desperation they have for money.
Right. Now, Toby, third thing before we wrap up that I want to ask you about. You are a fiction writer. Would you even dare to write a character into something like this if it were fiction, where a mother and son were both going to the police academy together?
Yeah, that was quite something. It was interesting in that she's almost not even a character.
Right.
And it's basically like, don't you get worried, if, he's going to an active shooter thing and you hear it on the radio? And she's like, nah, not really.
Better him than me.
He comes off as I think a pretty appealing guy. And I think he gets into it for the right reasons. And then at the end, like, you kind of feel like, after spending this year, with training and then riding along with different police and stuff, like, he really comes away with it. Like, at least what he talks about is kind of what I think we've identified as being the really positive aspects of some of the police, which is that, it's a social worker aspect of things.
Right.
It's like, I'm in a ruined community, taking sort of a broader view, which I think is, and again, it's like a documentary. So who knows what the reality of some of this stuff is, but that certainly is what comes across as what Flint needs, is not sort of this hard ass cowboy stuff, but people who are, strong and not going to take bullshit, and
like Lieutenant McDreamy.
Oh,
yeah,
that guy.
But who are also understand like what the greater goal is,
Right.
and it's not just like putting away as many people as possible.
Right. They did show Lieutenant McDreamy's wife, by the way, and I would never want to mess with her. She seemed tough. So I'm just saying.
I like McDreamy's going through the neighborhood, pointing out the graffiti.
Yes.
Fuck the police.
Oh, and he was like, it's just an act of love for the police.
Act of love. Make love to your local law enforcement
They want to
officer.
make sweet love to us because they appreciate our work so much. It was very good. So, Kevin, who's our next sponsor right now?
We're sponsored by Quince.
Oh, boy.
So we are kind of officially out of summer. We're into autumn. And now it's time to switch things up, move into a new season. And I think, we got to look right past Halloween. You got to start thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas and cooler, crisper weather.
Yeah.
And that means you got to get your cashmere sweater from Quince, priced from $50.
Yes.
And Rebecca, have you been keeping them afloat with all of your sweaters you've been buying from Quince?
I've got a couple bookmarked right now, Kevin. Right now, my favorite is this very cute kind of cropped, sort of quasi off-the-shoulder one. It comes in a color called, I think it's called strawberry cream. It also comes in a color called moss. And what's held me back, the only thing that's held me back, because it wasn't the price, was which one to get. I love Quince so much. The quality of their cashmere for the price is incredible.
Well, I was going to say that, if you could just get all of them, maybe you should.
Well,
thanks. I'm thinking twice about that right now, actually. So, switching seasons is a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials.
Just go to quince.com/crime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/crime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crime.
Peanut butter and jelly, dinner and a movie, rock and roll. Some things are just better together. In fact, it'd be pretty cool if you could get your favorite streaming apps and internet together, right? Xfinity thinks so, and that's what Xfinity Stream Saver was designed to deliver. When you add Xfinity Stream Saver to your internet, you get Apple TV+, Netflix, and Peacock, all for just $15 a month. That's a whole lot of entertainment for your money, all on the network built for streaming. Switch today. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Price subject to change.
Want to connect with a family member who doesn't speak your language? Then check out the language learning program Rosetta Stone on desktop or as an app. Rosetta Stone is designed to immerse you in the language you're learning through an intuitive process. Plus, the True Accent feature even gives you feedback on your pronunciation. And with a lifetime membership, you have access to all 25 offered languages. Get started today. Visit rosettastone.com/pod50 to get 50% off your lifetime membership now. That's rosettastone.com/pod50 for 50% off.
Your dining room is the heart of your home, where meals are shared and memories are made. At Ashley, you'll find affordable dining furniture in a range of classic and modern styles. Ashley's small space sets and extendable tables are designed to fit beautifully into any space. From cozy breakfast nooks and kitchens to formal dining areas fit for a feast. And with mix-and-match seating options, everyone at your table gets the perfect seat. At Ashley, style is served. Shop in-store or online today.
All right, well, let's do that thing that we do on the podcast right now. Let's let our listeners know. Should they check out Netflix's docuseries Flint Town if they haven't already? Laura Bricker, thumbs up or thumbs down review? What do you think?
I'm going to say thumbs up. Definitely. It was extremely well done. I fluctuated between depressed, helpless feeling for these poor police officers and then some optimism because I saw that there was still, there's good people out there that were really sincerely there trying to make a difference. So, and it's just, it was well done. It's very enlightening. So thumbs up.
Toby Ball, what about you? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Flint Town?
Thumbs up. I wish I saw the optimism that Laura did. I mean, it seems like the optimism seems like in these little microcosms, but that the greater Flint story, I mean, they still don't have drinking water.
Right.
I mean, for God's sake. It's long, but I don't feel like there was any padding to it or anything that I would have necessarily cut out. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely bingeable.
I agree. I loved this series. And Kevin, I'd like to apologize to you for avoiding watching it for so long. I thought it was going to be way more depressing than it is. And it is depressing, but it's depressing in a good way, if that makes sense. You need to see this stuff. And there are some disturbing scenes. You see some dead bodies in this, which we didn't talk about. And you really are confronted face on with race stuff that is painful, but it is done in a way that is designed to include the viewer in the conversation. I think some of the most effective and powerful moments in documentary, something we didn't talk about also, are the citizen interviews. The two ways right in front of the camera. You get the cops, you get their family members, but you also get just citizens talking about how they feel about the police. Those are used to great effect. I walked away from this understanding the city better. I walked away from this understanding the dynamics in the police force better. I really, really loved it. I love Flint Town. I think everyone should watch it. So I'm giving it a big thumbs up. Kevin, what about you?
I'm also going to give it a thumbs up. I thought one of the most effective things is that the filmmakers seemed to make everybody so comfortable that they were just very free with their thoughts, because it is a very thoughtful docuseries and beautifully shot, and you won't always agree with everything you hear people say, but I think that on whole it's balanced and covers a lot of different ground, and is still able to tell you the story of what happened in this police force over a year. It's shot beautifully. I think it gives you something to think about. It's certainly a documentary to toast.
Go to Quantico. Do you think she went?
No.
No,
I don't think she did.
Actually, I think we heard that she didn't, right? From the document when I interviewed the director or something.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, whenever you see them like at the end where they like flew off to Mexico, it's like it's the first time he ever left Michigan. They went to Mexico. Every time I've been to Mexico, I'm like, would this guy like it here? I don't know.
Oh, her life was going to be so limited. Remember how like her possibilities
maybe
were like
she's
endless?
happy. Maybe
It's
we're being
fine.
snobby and she's happy.
Maybe they got together and they broke up, and now she went to Quantico and she's Clarice Starling.
Yeah, could be.
We don't know. All right, does that do it for us, Kevin?
It does.
Well, this show was recorded in Studio C, The Closet, in our New Hampshire basement where the water is clean, but our language is fuck not. On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening. We will catch you later.
Partners in Crime Media. Peanut butter and jelly, dinner and a movie, rock and roll. Some things are just better together. In fact, it'd be pretty cool if you could get your favorite streaming apps and internet together, right? Xfinity thinks so, and that's what Xfinity Stream Saver was designed to deliver. When you add Xfinity Stream Saver to your internet, you get Apple TV Plus, Netflix, and Peacock, all for just $15 a month. That's a whole lot of entertainment for your money, all on the network built for streaming. Switch today. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Price subject to change.